got exposed to the methodology a couple of years ago. We did a little workshop in Monterey. I've been excited about it because it is quite unique. We are in the presence of a living genius here. So this has come through you from somewhere, right? You're channeling some deep wisdom here. And I do see the complementarity. So what I'm going to do is talk about conscious capitalism just to give you a relatively thorough introduction to what it is and why. And then I've spent a day or so thinking about how there's my potential synergy between what you do and what we're trying to do. And in potential areas, potentially for collaboration. I will talk also a little bit about our center at Tech, which I joined Tech full-time 3 years ago. And before that, I was part-time or visitor for 3 years. So this is my 40th year of teaching as a business professor. And I agree with all the criticisms that Ichak makes, of business schools in general, of the education that we provide, of the theoretical bent that we have, and maybe many of the wrong theories. There's nothing as dangerous as a bad theory. Bad ideas are more impactful in the world than bad people, because bad ideas can capture a lot of people's attention. And when they get adopted widely, it leads to some massive challenges. So I'm going to talk about these dimensions that normally you don't talk about in business, healing and caring spirit of business. And I like to use this analogy, the metaphor of transformation, which I know a lot of people use, right? The caterpillar becoming a butterfly. And for us, we look at it as two levels of consciousness. So if you think about the caterpillar, it exists as a level of consciousness, which is all about consumption. Right? Caterpillar's role is to consume as much as possible and grow into a much larger entity in a few weeks. And then it becomes, it starts the transformation journey, not consciously, of course. Nature turns on the imaginal cells, as they're called. And it enters that intermediate cocoon phase. And then emerges a few weeks later as a creature of light and beauty. The butterfly spreads enormous beauty in the world. But it also performs an essential function in nature, which is cross-pollination. Right? So here's a creature that at one level was all about consumption and nothing else. At another level is spreading light and beauty and flourishing in the world while it's living its own life. And I think, the butterfly, the caterpillar doesn't have a choice, but we have a choice. The caterpillar doesn't wake up one day and say, what kind of an empty life am I living? I need some purpose in my life. But many of us human beings, we get stuck. See, we have to choose. That is our blessing and our curse. Nothing happens automatically for us. We have to choose to evolve. We have that level of freedom. We are in charge of our own mutation, whether we choose to evolve or not. I know many 60, 70, 80-year-old caterpillars, right? People who are just living like a caterpillar. What does that mean? All they care about is more and more accumulation of material things in the world. They haven't reached that level of consciousness when they realize that's not what life is about. Right? It really is about spreading beauty and flourishing and joy in the world. Right? Those are the people who die happy. And when they die, other people are sad. And the other people, they die and nobody cares. It's like, okay, about time. Right? So I think this is a journey that we all can be on and should be on. And the same is true for the organizations that we create. We can create organizations and then consign them to an existence which is purely at a caterpillar level. You take in physical resources, natural resources, human resources, financial resources, and then you create wealth for the owner. That's a caterpillar level of organization. Or we can allow the organizations also to evolve to higher planes of consciousness. So they also are spreading beauty and joy and healing and love. And flourishing in the world. And that is also very possible, right? And that's what this journey is really about. Just to share a little bit of my journey, it's always interesting how any of us got where we are. I have been a business professor now for about 40 years. There's a little bit of a delay, so I'm getting impacted by that. Okay. So I was born in India, I lived there until I was 7. My father came back from Canada with his PhD in agriculture science at that time. So my first memory of my father is when I was 7 years old. And then we moved to Barbados. You know about Barbados and the Caribbean? Yeah, beautiful Caribbean. So suddenly I went from a little village in India without electricity or running water, and now we're in Barbados with all the beautiful, beaches and tourists and so forth. 2 years there, and then at the age of 9, we moved to California. We moved just up the coast here in which is in Monterey County, which was the home of John Steinbeck, famous author. Right? 2 years there, 67 to 69. Now, these were momentous years in the world, right? The anti-war movement, the hippies,
JFK.
RFK, actually. RFK getting killed. The first Martin Luther King got shot. JFK was 63.
63, right?
So 68, right? And yeah, Martin Luther King, I remember very clearly the days when that happened, and then RFK getting killed. And it was like a lot going on in the world. And then we moved to Canada for a year in Winnipeg, which I don't recommend. That was terrible, and the winters are worse. That's when I saw the man landing on the moon. I remember that July of 69. I mean, it was like big events in our world. And then we moved back to India. I spent 5 years from 7 to almost 12 out here, and then back to India. And it's like going back 1 century in time back then, and a very, very different culture.
Which part of India?
We are from the central part, city most people haven't heard of, Colindro, which is, it's not one of the big commercial cities. And then I had to readjust to that culture, and then I finished my high school engineering and then MBA there. And then I came back to the US. Accidentally, I find all the big things that have happened in my life are not because of some grand plan, but because you happen to be in a certain place at a certain time. Right, so I came down for breakfast one day. Now this is Neha calling. Okay. I came down for breakfast one day in Mumbai in our last semester of my MBA program. And this is not a long.
There's no be a business here.
Yeah, we have the connection of Columbia Business School, right? So I came down for breakfast one day, and 6 or 7 of my friends were dressed up and going somewhere. I said, "Where are you guys going?" They were going to the US Information Agency to get GMAT applications. I said, "We're already doing our MBA. Why do you need GMAT?" So we want to apply for a PhD in business. I said, "Oh, I didn't know you can do a PhD in business." And in those days, we didn't know anything, right? There was no internet, there was no nothing. So I had lived here as a kid. I said, "Oh, give me 5 minutes, I'll come with you." I was still in my pajamas. Okay? So I went up and I went with them, and then a few weeks later, we gave me an exam, and a few weeks later, we got those little envelopes, and I got a good score. I applied to Columbia, and I got into Michigan and North Carolina and Cornell, and full scholarship. I said, "Why not?"
Right.
So suddenly I'm heading to New York. I already had a job lined up with a consulting company. Now my life completely changed, but I came to Columbia in 81, September or August of 81. Now, this was the beginning of the Reagan years, the beginning of the Wall Street, the movie Wall Street. Greed is good. Jack Welch became CEO of General Electric that same year. So this was the beginning of this sort of very much capitalistic, profit-oriented shareholder. It's all about that, right? This was the decade of greed, they called it later on. Right? And so I came into it somewhat as an outsider. I think that's one of the gifts that I've had in my life, that I'm always a little bit of an outsider and an insider. Because having lived in India, then here, then back in India, then back here, every place I go, I can look at it with somewhat objective eyes. I'm sorry, this might be important. Hi, sweetie, are you okay? May?
Yeah, honey, I'm fine. Somebody's trying to call the house.
Oh, I
Is
see.
that you?
No, I don't think so. I'm here teaching, actually. So the whole audience is hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, it must be my dad. Sorry
Okay,
about
okay.
that. Hi.
Hi. Okay, if you could hear that. Kind of magical, this thing, yeah. So I think, why I'm telling you all this is because I didn't grow up with a dream to be a marketing professor. I don't know any kid who does. If they do, then you probably want to take them to a psychologist. Something wrong with this kid. Oh, John Farley?
No, Noel Capone.
Oh, Noel Capone. Yeah. Noel was. Oh my God. We have so many.
Which one?
That's why he was successful. But I had an outsider perspective, right? Because I came from a country that had almost zero marketing. Literally there were 15 minutes a day on the one government-owned channel of television. There's only one channel. Ended at 10 p.m., started at 5 p.m. And all the ads were in 15 minutes.
You know where you do that marketing in India?
Yeah.
I was lecturing in Mumbai.
Yeah.
And there was a president of a company with a big smile on his face.
Yeah.
In the break, he came to me in a very paternalistic, put his hand on my shoulders and Dr. Adizes, we don't need marketing. We should be two friends in the government.
Yeah, that's true. It's a heavily regulated economy, lots of red tape, lots of corruption, bribery, all of that, right? And so, but then I come to New York, 1980s. It's like a tsunami of marketing. I mean, literally, like you cannot get away. I mean, even in the urinal in the bathroom, there's an ad in front of you. You look up in the sky, there's a little airplane with a little thing behind it. The Sunday New York Times is literally 3 inches thick with all ads and coupons. And so soon I started asking the question, this is a lot of money being spent on marketing. What are we getting for this? Right? What are we getting for customers, companies, and society? So eventually my research became about marketing ethics, marketing efficiency, and effectiveness. What do we spend? What do we get? And I did about 10 years of research on that. And the answer was pretty dismal, that every year marketing spending was going up. And yet customer satisfaction had plateaued at a low level and customer loyalty was plummeting and customer trust was falling even further as we spend more and more every year. I said, this is madness. This is marketing mania, right? It's like an arms race out there. In 2004, I did a study where we quantified how much we were spending. It was $1 trillion that year. Ads, coupons, and junk mail, just in the US. Okay? Now, the GDP of India was 700 billion that year. So 1 billion people were living on less than what we were spending here on ads, coupons, and junk mail. On a per capita basis, that was about $14,000 per family, which is more than the income of 88% of the world's population. And we're spending it on ads, coupons, and junk mail. I said, what are we getting? Do customers love marketing? Then I did a study on the image of marketing, 2,000 interviews. 86% of Americans don't trust marketing. If it's marketing, that means it's not true. Have you ever heard that? Or that's just marketing?
No.
Don't believe it, it's just marketing. Now, you get a PhD in marketing and then people say such things, you don't feel very proud, right? So my inner dialogue was my father got a PhD in agriculture science because he wanted to cure world hunger. And I got a PhD in marketing. I'm just out here selling more junk to people who don't need it and can't afford it, probably. It's not good for them, right? So I almost had a kind of shame about it. I was kind of, without knowing it, I was searching for meaning in my life. And I wanted to be proud of what I did, but I was actually ashamed that I was part of that system, right? That was using women's bodies to sell products. And that leads to eating disorders and body dysmorphia and depression in teenage girls. That we're getting kids hooked on junky cereals and all kinds of nonsense, right? We're creating now with social media, all of this false sense of what is life really about, etc. So I think so I started to look at what are customers getting, what are companies getting, and what is society getting for that $1 trillion. And the answer was negative. Companies get a very low return. 98% of ads are never noticed, and 97% of coupons are never redeemed, and 95% of direct mail goes straight into the trash can. I said, what enormous waste, right? And what's happening to society? We've got a rise of obesity and diabetes and epidemics of mental health and autoimmune, lots of negative things happening in society because we are creating this false narrative through all that spending, right? And so that led me to ask the question, is there a better way? And I think that's a very important question. Whatever you're asking about, the answer is always yes. And so is there a better way to think about marketing? And I said the norm is that companies spend a lot of money. Many companies spend over $1 billion, $2 billion, like P&G and Coke and all these all the beer companies. They spend a lot of money and yet their customer loyalty and trust are low. So the opposite of that is you don't spend much money and yet your customers love you. I said, let me find companies that customers love and they're not spending crazy amounts of money on marketing. So with that, I found about a half dozen companies and I started to look at them through a deep case study approach. And I soon found that their customers love them, but so did their employees. They had very high levels of employee loyalty and retention and engagement. Suppliers were loyal to them, right? Communities embraced them. So actually, not just customers, everybody seemed to love these companies. So hence, the book that came out of that research originally was called, I have to tell you all the sequence, right? It started with marketing malpractices, because it was looking at what's wrong with marketing. Then it became shame of marketing. Peter Drucker, you mentioned earlier, he used the phrase, the shame of marketing, to refer to the consumer movement in America. He said, if consumers have to organize against companies, that means the companies are not doing what they're supposed to be doing for those customers. That is the shame of marketing. Your job is to make life better for your customers, and now they're organizing against you. And I was using it in a broader sense, but really it was my own shame that was coming through that. Unfortunately, my mentor, Jack Shedd, said to me, you know, Raj, in America, people want to hear about the solution, not the problem. Okay, so let's look for the solution. That's why the book was changed. Not criticizing what is wrong, but finding the right way to do it, right? And so we found these companies loved by everybody, and that's how we discovered the 4 pillars of conscious capitalism that I will talk about: higher purpose, stakeholder orientation, not just shareholder, conscious leadership, and a caring culture. That's what came out of that. And the Whole Foods CEO, John Mackey, read that book. That was one of the companies I had written about, was Whole Foods. And he loved the book and asked me to come and spend a day with him in Austin in October of 2007. The book came out in February. And so I spent a day, and at the end of the day, you know, I had a mind map in my jacket for my vision, because I was on fire after that. I said, oh my God, I want to dedicate the rest of my life to this story of business. These are companies that are loved by everybody, and they're very successful, as I will show you. And in that instant, my purpose found me. I was literally in tears sitting in Poconos in Pennsylvania on a writing retreat. I'm writing some of the stories. I remember it was a story about UPS of all companies. Turns out it's a great company with a 100-year history, and they're a tremendous culture. And this was about a woman whose husband was a driver, and he had died on the job. And then they put her through college, and they gave her a job, and she was able to look after her family. And I was like, literally moved to tears. And I said to my co-author, David, sitting across the table, and I said, David, I've never experienced tears of joy connected to my work. I've often experienced disappointment, frustration, maybe anger, but to have tears of joy is a rare and precious thing, and it means your body is telling you something, that this really matters. You have tears when something really matters. Okay? And I said, I finally, all those years, all my education was all about the head and the wallet. Everything in business school, everything in all schools for the most part, right? Head and the wallet, and it completely bypassed the heart and the soul and the spirit. And I didn't even know that was possible until that moment. So from that moment, I said, but this is like my purpose, like a butterfly just landed on my shoulder. This is what I want to do the rest of my life. I want to tell this story of business. I want to understand it. Why does it happen? How can we make it happen? And that's what I want to create a movement. So I had an acronym called INC, the Institute for New Capitalism, or INC. I make acronyms for everything. Okay. And I showed it to John, and he said, that's exactly my vision, but I like the phrase conscious capitalism, which was coined by Muhammad Yunus, who created the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, right? The micro-lending. I had never heard it before.
Nobel Prize winner.
Sorry?
Nobel Prize winner.
Nobel Peace Prize winner, yeah. I'd never heard it, but it resonated with me right away. So then we decided to have a retreat at John's Ranch in February of 2008. I invited half a dozen people, he invited a bunch of people, and then we said, yeah, let's do this. Let's try to launch a movement. So that October, we had our first conference in Austin. And now we've had 16 or 17 of those, right? So the movement started then. Now we're in about 25 cities, about 15 other countries, including Mexico, Brazil. We have 11 chapters within Brazil. It's quite well known. So this idea has taken root since that time. And then my journey continued in the years since. So one of the things I noticed was conscious companies have a lot more of what is normally called feminine energy. What is that? Compassion, empathy, relationship, caring, relationships, right? Nurturing, all of those, forgiveness.
Emotional intelligence.
Right. So there was much more. Even if the CEO was a man, they still have more feminine energy, right? So all of us have access to masculine and feminine. As Carl Jung said, inside every man, there's a woman in every man, there's a man in every woman, something like that, right? And so, but that feminine side has been suppressed for almost all of human history, right? For millennia, we have had the world dominated by men and only accessing masculine energy. So what is healthy masculine energy, which is strength, courage, focus, structure, determination, all of that, in the absence of the feminine becomes hyper-masculine, domination, aggression, hyper-competition, winning at all costs. Everything becomes a damn war, right? War is war, business is war, sports is war, everything is war, right? And that ultimately leads to a lot of suffering. Do you have a hand here somewhere? I thought I saw somebody. No, okay. So that was one exploration. Shakti is the Indian word for the divine feminine. And the idea of wholeness. It's not about replacing the masculine with the feminine, but actually integrating that which exists in all of us. But we have shut down, right? And we have suppressed or denied. And then book called Everybody Matters, which was really about democratizing these ideas. Some people said, oh, okay, it's fine for Patagonia and it's fine for Whole Foods and companies like that. But what about little manufacturing companies, in little towns? They can't. This is a luxury good, conscious capitalism. So this is the story of a manufacturing company called Barry Wehmiller, small company based in St. Louis, and they were making equipment for the beer industry. And over time, they started adopting these ideas, and that predates us. I mean, Bob Chapman did this on his own because he had some awakenings in church, at a wedding, etc. And he started to treat people with love and what you call mutual care and trusting care, but also love. And started using phrases like everybody is somebody's precious child, and we have to treat them that way. And changed their business completely. And then started acquiring other struggling manufacturing companies, of which there are many. Right? Many of them are almost bankrupt or going out of business. He was able to buy them and turn them all around. Never laid off people, same business, same location, little town in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, and now they're thriving. Because they're putting people at the center and treating them with respect and care. And that formula became so perfected that now he has acquired 130 companies and never sold a single one. He doesn't treat companies like a commodity to be bought and sold. Right? This is a group of people and there's a soul to the company. And it's like adopting a company, not buying a company. Because when you adopt a company, it's like you adopt a child. At some point when things get tough, you don't say, we need to let 2 of you go. Right? We can only handle 3 kids right now. We can't handle 5. So he does that to companies, believe it or not. Right? I mean, it's amazing. That story is quite extraordinary. And then we have a field guide, which is our attempt to say, how do you do this? How do you put it into practice? But again, nowhere near the kind of depth that you all have in this process. And then a book around the idea that business creates too much suffering in the world. And I'll share some data on that later. There's a lot of burnout. Guys, there's a lot of heart attacks. There's a lot of negative consequences because of the way we run our companies. It doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to kill people to make money. We can actually bring more joy into their life and reduce their suffering. And there were 25 stories of companies that do that. And then after many years of observing other people's stories, last year I decided to write my own. So that's what this book is about. The journey started when I turned 60. I'm 66 now. When I started exploring my own healing. And I was writing the book, The Healing Organization, and 4 women asked me the same question. You're writing a book about healing. What about your own healing? And I said, I don't have time for that. I've got a book deadline. October 5th, I have to turn in this book, And they said, no, book deadlines are flexible. You cannot write a book about healing if you don't work on your own healing. So I had the wisdom to listen to them. And then I said, delay the book by 5 months. And I set aside that time really for an inner journey and experiences like going to the Himalayas, where I had my 60th birthday on the border of India to Tibet, going to the Amazon rainforest and spending 10 days with the shamans and the indigenous people there, going to a silent retreat in upstate New York, working with the code, doing all this work, And I started getting so many insights about my own life and started to make sense and recognize that I had all this trauma I was carrying around and I'd never acknowledged and never forget about healing it. And so that's been the journey of the last 5 years, is to understand and start to heal some of that and then share that with the world. So my purpose, which came to me that day in June of 2005 in Pennsylvania, is to elevate consciousness and open hearts for all of humanity so we can build a world in which all life matters and every life thrives. I specifically go beyond human beings here. All life matters, and we are destroying life on this planet. We're living through the 5th mass extinction in the history of this planet. The first one caused by human activity because we weren't here 35 million years ago for the last one. Right? So there's an extraordinary amount of suffering that we are creating on this planet. And we have to reverse that and change that. The only way is through consciousness and through love. Okay, with that as preamble, we'll talk about capitalism. In my 6 years of business education, I never learned about capitalism. We just kind of take it for granted, like it's the air you breathe. It's like they say fish are the last to discover water. They're swimming in it. They don't know there's something called water, right? We're swimming, and we're fortunate to be swimming in a system called capitalism because it's not a common thing in the history of the world. It's a rare thing. It's a recent thing, right? So capitalism is only about 250 years old, the modern version of capitalism. And if you look at the economic history and look at per capita incomes, below $500 for most of that time. In the year $2,000, right? What does that mean? 90% of people living on less than $1 a day. Maybe 95%. right? Struggling just to stay alive. And that's like subsistence level, if that, right? And nothing much changing. Going from 0 to 1,000, we actually went backwards a little bit, right? And then we started waking up, coming out of the dark ages, right? We had the Renaissance, the invention of printing, and Newton and Galileo. And these were all big steps ahead, but they didn't impact the ordinary people, the peasants out there working in the fields, right? Their lives didn't get impacted by that at all. What finally changed were a few things that happened very quickly in a short amount of time. Starting in Scotland in 1760 with the Industrial Revolution. This was a massive, perhaps still the greatest technological leap we've ever taken, even maybe bigger than AI or internet or all of that, right? Because this one fundamentally transformed the way in which we produce products, and our productive capacity went up 10x, 100x, even 1000x in some industries. We could now mass produce things, right? And costs went down. And with that, and then people started having jobs in the factories. So there was a tick in per capita income that happened. But it wasn't enough to change society. We also then needed an intellectual breakthrough. The society was still organized in a very centralized way. The kings, the monarchs, or even the elected governments would decide so much, right? And people had very little freedom or social mobility. You were born into a certain class and a certain profession, and very hard for you to change that. There were all these restrictions on that. Adam Smith, a moral philosopher, not an economist. There were no economists in the world. That profession had not been invented yet. So moral philosopher Adam Smith asked a simple question: why do some countries get rich and others remain poor? And most people said it's obvious it has to do with natural resources. Or some people said the work ethic. He said, no, that doesn't explain it. What explains it is freedom. Societies in which ordinary people have greater freedom to shape their own lives, decide what they want to do, and then trade with each other without restriction, that those societies, people would sense and meet each other's needs in a way that also fulfilled them. So this is one of history's great insights, that freedom is linked with prosperity. Human beings want to be free, and we also want to live more prosperous lives. And those ideas are connected. The idea of the invisible hand of the market came out of this. That the market will better allocate resources and set prices than a central planning government can do. Now, of course, this came out in Scotland, right? So both those things happen in Scotland, which is, think about it. Scotland is a little country, right? They gave us Scotch whiskey and golf. It's not bad for a little country, but they also gave us the Industrial Revolution, the Scottish Enlightenment, and Adam Smith.
And roads. Tarmac.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the base for tarmac was Scott.
Okay, thank you, Scott. But as I said, the Europe wasn't a place you could apply Adam Smith's ideas, but that same year, it's an amazing historic coincidence. The US was born, right? The US Declaration of Independence was 1776. Now, it's not a complete coincidence. So Benjamin Franklin, one of the authors of the Declaration, 3 or 4 years ago was in Europe and had dinner with Adam Smith. And Adam Smith read him some early chapters from Wealth of Nations. Right? So some of those ideas became embedded in the founding DNA of this country. Right? Where it said all men are created equal, endowed by their creator, et cetera, et cetera. It's basically rooted in freedom. Here's a country whose DNA was rooted in freedom, religious freedom, political freedom, and economic freedom. And the common man was in charge of his own destiny by right of law. And I do mean man, it didn't apply to women. Women wouldn't get the right to vote for another 150 years. And certainly didn't apply to slaves or all the other. It applied to white men, but it was still revolutionary. No other society in the history of the world had that. So that combination of the technological breakthrough, the intellectual breakthrough, and then the oxygen of freedom has enabled humanity to take off on every dimension. Life expectancy has gone from 28 to 73. Literacy has gone from 14 to 90. Per capita incomes have gone from 600 to 21,000, 3,000% increase. Percentage of people living in poverty has gone from 90% now to below 9%. And our human population reached 1 billion in 1820 and now 8 billion. So many more people living longer, fuller, more human lives. Because before that, it was almost an animalistic existence. All you're doing is foraging for food to stay alive. That's what animals do. How many Einsteins were born and they lived and they died in those fields? Never got educated, never had access, never had time to do anything other than survive. Right? So this has uplifted humanity more than any other idea that we've ever had by far. I think we want to start from that place of recognizing and appreciating capitalism. It's an idea that has done more for us than any other idea. And yet also recognizing the reality that a lot of people don't have confidence in business nowadays. Now, this is in the US, you can see a long-term decline. This year, 84% of Americans don't trust business, big business. They might trust the local mom and pop business, but they don't trust any company, corporation. Right? And so why is that? Why are people losing trust? You start to see that 7 out of 8 Americans feel like their company doesn't care about them as a human being. Who you are as a human being doesn't matter. So are you doing your job and can that make me more money? Right? And then if you look at the financial side of this, for a long time, especially in the 50s, 60s, and the 70s in this country, the middle class was growing, workers were making a good living, right? Income inequality wasn't there. Executives weren't getting paid crazy amounts. There was like a 30 to 40 to 50x multiple between executive pay and worker pay. Now we're about 500 to 1. And worker pay has been flat for about 40 years. It's gone up now in the last 3 years after the pandemic. But overall, 10% increase in 40 years versus 1,000% increase for executives. And you see a shocking number like this before the pandemic when the US was having an economic boom. What was life like for ordinary people? 40% of Americans had less than $400. And if they needed $2,000 within 30 days, would not be able to come up with it. So a small emergency could derail your life. Right? You could fall apart, your car breaks, your kid falls sick and you don't have health insurance, right? So it's shocking that 2/3 of Americans have hourly jobs. Only 1/3 of Americans have salary jobs. And 50% of Americans are paycheck to paycheck, pretty much. And 40% have no savings at all. Right? So that's the lived reality for most people in the richest country, one of the richest countries in the world. Right? So there's something here not working well for ordinary people. And there are many global challenges that we face, and the way in which we've done business, not only the income inequality, but of course, climate change, the loss of nature, talked about species extinction, deforestation, the soil is eroding at an extraordinary rate, right? And then all of the public health crises around obesity and diabetes and cancer, autoimmune, all of these things are exploding at very high levels. And then increasingly the threats to democracy as well, we're starting to see. And I think a lot of these problems are not caused by business, but the way in which we have carried out business has contributed to most of these. Many of these are our so-called externalities. We don't have to account for them on our income statements or balance sheets. Consequences of the products that we sell and how we produce them. So we have to be part of the solution to all of these challenges. Now, shockingly, the majority of young Americans a few years ago said, yeah, socialism might be a better thing than capitalism. Now, they've never experienced socialism. They have no idea what they're talking about, right? I experienced a mild version of socialism in India, but that was democratic socialism in the 70s in India, where the banks were all nationalized and the airline was nationalized and the government controlled everything. It was a horrible, dead economy, okay? Very few opportunities. But it reflects the frustration that people have. Right? They're seeing all of the so-called side effects of capitalism. Right? They're seeing their parents be unhappy and miserable and stressed out and burned out. Right? So there's a lot of angst out there. Young people are idealistic and purposeful more than ever before, and they are also more cynical about business. It's up to us to inspire them about business. So I would say traditional American style capitalism is not working as well as it needs to for ordinary people and for the planet. It's working quite well, I would say, for most of us in this room. Maybe the top 30% doing pretty well, quite well, but it's not working well for most people. And so where did we go wrong? I think this starts with this basic understanding of what is a human being? What do we care about? Now, economists have created this caricature called Homo economicus, right? That we are maximizers of our short-term material well-being. We look at everything and how can I maximize what's in it for me right away, right? That's sort of the foundational assumption of most economic theory. Might be overstating that a little bit. Now we have behavioral economics and other fields of economics, but the mainstream of economics is rooted in this idea. Now, is that actually an accurate depiction of who we are as human beings? So we are the species known as Homo sapiens. There were many humanoids that emerged This is the one that has survived and thrived, right? Why? Because there are certain unique qualities to Homo sapiens. Yes, we are self-interested. We need to be, right? And we have a duty to take care of ourselves. But it doesn't end there. Right? We are also self-aware, conscious. We are able to look at our own lives in a detached way and see the bigger picture of what's happening in the world around us. We are also loving. We have a fundamental need to give and receive love. It defines us as human beings, as mammals as well. Okay? Even more than self-interest, we are defined by our need to give and receive love. I'm lacking. We are also altruistic. We do things without expecting anything in return. We are incredibly cooperative, more than any other species. Maybe the bees are incredibly cooperative, the ants are incredibly, but they are doing it from a place of consciousness, right? They're wired. They do all these extraordinary things, but we as a species are able to cooperate consciously at scale, and 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 million people working together and creating and doing, establishing businesses and doing extraordinary things. Our ability to cooperate is what defines us. It's not about how our ability to compete with each other, but our ability to cooperate with each other is the source of our success as a species. In that sense, we have understood Darwin all wrong. I'm working with an evolutionary biologist right now named David Sloan Wilson, right? And evolutionary biology is not about the survival of the fittest, and actually the people who survive and thrive are the ones who are able to cooperate better with each other, right, and adapt, right, to changing circumstances. So it's competing through cooperation, and we are increasingly purpose-driven. You know, when 95% of us were living out there and struggling just to stay alive, your purpose was to stay alive. You couldn't think about why am I here, right? You didn't have the luxury, but now many of us do have. And we recognize now the highest selling book in the history of publishing hardcover is called The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. It's only 60, 70 million copies by now. He's the pastor in Scottsdale. It's called What on Earth Am I Here For? It's a religious, I mean, it's basically written by a pastor, but it's called The Purpose-Driven Life, right? So there's a hunger for purpose in a human life.
Driven life.
The purpose-driven life. And also, so then related to that idea of Homo economicus is this idea of profit maximization. So economists naturally looked at businesses and said there's just a collection of people, and therefore the same objective applies. Right? People are there to maximize their own material well-being, so is the company. And that idea, which became more deeply ingrained when Milton Friedman wrote his famous essay in 1970. The only social responsibility of a business is to increase its profits. Coming from Friedman, somehow that became gospel, right? But and business schools pretty much developed theory around that. Johnson Meckling, agency theory, all kinds of theories in the 70s to support that basic idea. Right? It's very, very much a fundamental economics-based curriculum that developed.
It's the base for Wall Street.
Yeah. And now the irony is that if you look at overall performance at the economy level, since that time, it has gone down in terms of return on assets. What does that tell us? That shareholder value theory has failed. Even on its own narrow terms of making money, it doesn't actually make more money. The more you obsess about profits, the less you will be able to create profits over time, because you're going to do things that are going to hurt your ability to create value. You're going to squeeze your employees, you're going to squeeze your suppliers, you're going to cut corners with customers, etc. There's a lot of academic research on this. This is a review paper looking at hundreds of articles that have looked at this question of what happens when you focus on just creating shareholder value. And there's compelling evidence that governing companies, in order to maximize current stock prices, can lead to severe negative consequences for all constituencies, including society and shareholders. It is not good for shareholders to put them as the only purpose of business. Okay. It's like if you have 5 children and you took one of them and say, everything is geared around you, it's not good for even you, right? Forget about the other children.
Should be all the stakeholders.
We're all stakeholders in the business, and they're all connected to each other. So what do we conclude from this? That we need to celebrate capitalism. Okay, it is still the greatest thing that we've ever done. I mean, all these innovations and everything that defines our life, these are all the fruits of capitalism. Right? No socialist government ever invented an iPhone, okay? But we need to elevate it with higher consciousness, because if we don't do that, we will destroy it. There's no guarantee that once you, like, when you can become more conscious and then you can slide back. You can become a capitalist country and then you can go back to some totalitarian state. Venezuela, Cuba, and 36 other countries have gone through that. Okay? It happens when the excesses of laissez-faire capitalism become so pronounced that people start revolting. We have planted the seeds for revolution right now. You see these scenes, these are all from Latin America, but you could get them from other places. That's Chile. Chile was the most free market society in the world. Pinochet worked directly with the Chicago boys, including Milton Friedman, right, to create a free market haven while also a military dictatorship in the 70s. And now they've gone very much to the left. You see Bolivia and Colombia and all these, even Mexico and Brazil and many other countries, right, have gone in that direction. Why? Because people are struggling. People are suffering. The suffering is real. Now, the solutions may not be real, they may not be effective that those governments are proposing, but these are warning signs that what we are doing is not sustainable and is not going to succeed in the long run. We need to change. Business as usual is not an option. As usual, I mean business focused purely on shareholder and profit maximization and shareholder value. That is a dangerous idea that has now reached its limits. So we need to rethink everything. We need a new story of business. The story of business we tell doesn't inspire anybody. Business exists to maximize profits. Well, which young person said, wow, let me be part of that, right? Or which employee gets energized by saying, we're going to maximize our share price. Yeah, that doesn't make me excited to go to work unless I'm a CFO or a CFO executive, right? Which is why people are not attracted to business. The most idealistic young people want nothing to do with business. I taught a summer camp course a few years ago. 40 kids from all over the country the program was about leadership, ethics, and sustainability. Then I gave a little talk on conscious capitalism. At the end, I asked them, how many of you plan to go into business? Not a single hand went up. I said, wow, what do you plan to do? We're going to start a nonprofit to address water and hunger and public health and all these other problems the world has. I said, that's great that you want to solve those problems. Can you do it as a business? Because that'll make you scalable and sustainable. You won't rely on donations and subsidies, but they think business is selfish and greedy and therefore evil, and nonprofits are virtuous and good. There's a wall here. I'm a good person. I'm going to be over here. We need to tell the story. Business can be beautiful. Business can be noble. Business can be heroic. And it is. I saw the most heroic entities in the world are companies. There's nothing as wonderful as a great company in the world. Right? Creates massive value for all of humanity, but we don't tell that story. Right? We tell a very, very uninspiring story. And the story that we create needs to have a different worldview. Before Copernicus, we thought that the Earth was the center of the universe, right? And everything, the moon and the sun and the stars revolved around the Earth. And he told us that's not true. In business and capitalism, we have put profit at the center, and people and communities and the environment and other species and everything revolves around profit. I only do it if it's going to increase profit. The well-being of people and society doesn't matter. We need to actually flip that and put not only people, but also all of life in its other species. What happens when the bees disappear? Einstein said the humans will disappear 5 years later. We're all connected, okay, in an intricate web of life. We need to put life at the center. People, other forms of life, and our planetary systems. And everything, including profit, has to serve that. We need a life economy, not a death economy, which is what we have right now. We make money by killing our planet. We are doing that. I mean, literally, we're destroying $5 trillion worth of the amount of value that nature gives us. 40 trillion or so every year, we get free value from nature. That includes the butterflies and the bees. You don't get an invoice from the bees for all the pollination. It's all being done for us. We are destroying that. So we need to rethink everything. Why do we exist? Who are we? What do we do? How do we do it? How do we define success? All of these need new answers. Because the old answers are wrong. They don't work anymore, if they ever did. So the 4 fundamental questions, so that's where conscious capitalism comes in. We ask why, what, who, and how, right? And we have different answers when you think about it with a higher consciousness. What does it mean to be more conscious? It just means seeing the bigger picture, right? It's like if I turn all the lights off in this room, you won't be conscious of what's in this room, right? And if I light a little match over here, I can be conscious of about a 1 foot radius around that. I can see that. If I give you a flashlight, you can be conscious of more. If I turn on the light, you'll be conscious of more. Well, there's no limit to that. You can keep turning on lights and becoming more and more conscious, seeing reality as it truly is, recognizing how things are interconnected and interdependent, understanding the consequences of your actions on other people and on the future, and then being accountable and responsible for those consequences, right? It's all about waking up. And so the question of why, the old answer was very simple: profit. Any kid on the street will tell you, why does a business exist? To make money, right? Businessmen are money guys. No, we said, no, there needs to be a higher purpose to your business. Just like each of us should have a higher purpose in our life. I told you mine earlier, right? We're not here just to exist and get a job and pay the bills and retire and die and that's it. We're here to do something meaningful with this unique human life. No two humans have ever been alike. Each of us comes here with unique gifts. Only we hold a piece of the puzzle. We'll figure out what that is. The lucky ones of us are able to figure that out, right? Every entity we create should have its own higher purpose beyond profit. Profit is necessary for business, right? But it's like saying, I need red blood cells in order to live. The purpose of my life is not to produce as many red blood cells as possible and then store them in a blood bank, right? It is to use those red blood cells to do what I want to do with them. Businesses use their profits to grow and achieve at scale what their purpose is, at a higher and higher scale. And then what do we do? It was about create wealth for the owners, products and services for customers. We need to go beyond that to say we need to create value for all of our stakeholders, okay? And at multiple levels of value. Not just like for an employee, right? It can be just a job, or it can be a career, or it can be a calling. Can I meet your needs at all three levels? It's a good job, it's a great career, and it's aligned with who you are, right? That's creating value for your employees. We need to do that for all of our stakeholders, create value for them and with them. And when you do that, it creates value for the overall entity. And for each of these, I have an acronym that I'm talking. And who are we as leaders? It was about, can you deliver the results? Can you get the bottom line, share price, etc.? Doesn't matter how you did it, how many bodies are buried behind you. You know, there's a whole phenomenon of sociopathic CEOs. You know the profession with the highest percentage of psychopaths in the world? CEOs. There's a book called Psychopaths in the Boardroom. Yeah. Number 2 is surgeons, by the way. Yeah. Surgeons are psychopaths, who knew? But, you know, I guess they disconnect their emotions from what they.
Well, they have a God complex.
Yeah. And so it's about taking people to a better place. It's about being inspired, motivated by service to the people, service to the purpose of the organization. It's not about me and feathering my nest and maximizing my power and ego and money, right? Gone beyond the narrow self. And then how does it feel to work here? Most businesses have a tremendous amount of fear and stress. You know, we use the metaphor of carrots and sticks. To motivate people, right? Carrot is your bonus at the end of the year. Stick is you get fired or whatever, punished. What animal belongs between a carrot and a stick?
Rabbits.
Donkey. You don't rabbits.
Of course.
Hey, listen, rabbit, you can't even.
Big rabbits.
Oh, that's funny. The carrot, yes, but the stick is
I wasn't.
We are not donkeys, okay? Human beings, when they do their greatest work, are inspired from inside. It's intrinsic motivation. Right? Then I'll do almost divine things. Human beings are capable of acts of divine creation, not because there's a carrot and a stick hanging around, but because they've got inspiration, right? Or from the campus of the organization, etc. So we'll talk about each of these briefly. I know I'm looking at the time here. We have a hard stop at 4:30. Where's Shyam? More or less?
Yeah, 3:30.
I'm sorry, 3:30. Got a little flexibility? I could ask for Neha's time as well.
Which means 2 hours.
Okay, so let's talk about purpose. Okay, here's a shocking statement. Purpose of business is not to make a profit. You might be thinking, who is this bloody communist? The purpose of business is to produce profitable solutions to the problems of people and the planet. See the big difference? The focus is on solutions. They need to be profitable, otherwise it cannot be done as a business. Now, you still need to solve those problems if you cannot find a business model, right? Because maybe the government has to do it or nonprofits have to do it. But for a business to do it, we have to be able to figure out how to do it and make a profit, because that makes us scalable and sustainable. That's the magic of business, right? It can grow without limits and solve real problems and create more value than it takes in. It's like the ultimate perpetual motion machine. Remember when people used to try to invent a perpetual motion machine that would just keep going? Business is one such thing. Now, it cannot be about making a profit while you're hurting people on the planet. Now, I would say the vast majority of businesses on this planet in the planetary heights history here, they've created value, of course, but they've also hurt so much more. If you add it all up, there's some recent true cost accounting thing that's going on, right? The product that's sell for $5 is probably $25 worth of real costs in it. We call them externalities. We're not required to account for those, right? But we can't do that anymore. So I've come to believe that every great purpose is a healing purpose. Now, initially I came up with this as an acronym for the qualities of a great purpose. But then as I thought about it, I said, yeah, this is actually more than that. We all need to be part of the healing of our world. There is a lot of suffering. People are suffering, families are suffering, countries are suffering, companies are suffering, communities, and other species, right? There's all kinds of pain and suffering in the world. Yeah, we've made great material advancement in the last 200 years, but anxiety, depression, drug addiction, and suicide are all going up at double digits. During the pandemic, by the way, in June of 21, something like 25% of young people in this country actively considered suicide. Okay? Less than 1 month. There's a lot of psychological and other forms of suffering. And therefore, the only human response to suffering is to try to bring healing. And by that, I mean reduce suffering, bring more joy, and enable healthy growth. There's a lot of compulsive, unhealthy growth, cancerous type growth in business. We have to grow by this much every year, and we'll do whatever it takes to grow by that. Right? That's an unhealthy, compulsive growth. Healthy growth is when the growth is the outcome of doing the right things. As the Buddha said, if you're attached to a cherished outcome, you will engage in wrong action. Do not be attached to that cherished outcome of growth. Right? Focus on the right action and the growth will follow. Right? So we need to think about healthy growth, but also reduce suffering. Whatever business I'm in, can I reduce suffering? If I'm in the food business and I feel something that is truly good for your body and good for your health and well-being, I'm healing you in that dimension, right? Likewise, if I'm meeting your needs for transport, whatever it is, if I'm doing it, if I practice business as a way to express myself and serve others, that's a healing act. But if I do business in a way that is to use others to serve myself, then I create suffering. I could sell the same product, right? But the mindset with which you approach it makes a difference. And then healing stands for the qualities for great purpose. It's heroic. It's not easy to do. It's going to stretch you to your limits, but it is worth doing. You know, it's like the hero's journey that all of us have to be on. You almost die to your old self in that, right? So it is heroic. When Henry Ford said, I want to produce a car that's for the multitudes, people working in the factory can drive home as a car, that was a heroic purpose. What did that require? Ultimately, the price of a Model T went down from $800 to $160. And the wages of the employees were doubled from the industry average, $5 a day. He was the first person that paid $5 a day. It's heroic. Evolving. Not to say that Henry Ford was a conscious capitalist in every way. There's that dimension. It evolves. As the company grows and the world changes, our purpose also evolves. It aligns everybody together. See, when you don't have a higher purpose and shared values, what happens? Everybody in that system becomes a taker. The CEO says, we're going to maximize shareholder value. Employees hear that and say, okay, I'm going to maximize my pay and minimize my work. Customers say, I want to get the lowest price every time. I won't be loyal to any company. I'll just go where the sale is. Suppliers say, I want to maximize the margins. I will cut corners on costs. Society, I want to tax you as much as possible. Everybody becomes a taker from that system. Now, no system can thrive if every component in that system is looking to extract as much as they can. The system will die. But when you have shared purpose and shared values, then everybody believes in that. Your customers believe in that. Your employees believe in that. Your investors believe in that. They all are now on the same side of the table. They are enabling that company to succeed at a much higher level. So if you take Whole Foods, everybody who shops at Whole Foods believes in food. They're foodies who care about nutrition. Same is true of employees. Investors want to bring about a world where we improve people's health and the health of the food system and the health of the planet, right? Everybody, suppliers are aligned with that, those values and that purpose, right? You reduce so much of the friction in that system, and you get so much more energy to propel that system forward. Now, it's rooted in love. We use the word love without shame in conscious capitalism. Everything that we do should be an expression of our caring and love into the world. Every action, every word we speak should come from love, not fear and greed, which often in business, many things come from fear and greed. Not anger, not jealousy, not anything, love. And we make every decision from a place of love. It might still be a hard decision. You might have to let somebody go. Can you do that with love? What does that mean? What does that look like? So again, this is an expression of love into the world. It's inspiring, gets me out of bed in the morning, excited to go to work. I don't say, oh God, it's Monday. I say, hey, I get to. I was in the Patagonia head office once on a Monday morning. People come in excited and they run up the stairs 2 at a time. Some other companies you go and it's like, back to the prison, you know. It's inspiring to go to work. It's harmony with nature, it's grounded in practical realities. So Whole Foods I mentioned, their purpose, the 1978, pretty much what it is now. Educate people that what you put into your body makes a difference to your health, the health of the food system, and the health of the planet as a whole. Right? And that's as true today as it was then. Should I lower the temperature a little bit? It's 73.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Great. Thank you.
70.
So this purpose is as urgent and valid today. Right? Even though they've made a lot of progress. They've changed the food culture in many ways, but this is a very important purpose. Google had their purpose written down even before they started the company when Sergey and Larry were at Stanford. And they had a dream for this search engine. They said, we want to organize the world's information and make it easily accessible and useful.
Do no evil.
They also had that,
That
which
was,
they haven't.
that's why so many of us followed them.
Yeah,
Literally.
Google, by the way, said we are proud to pay our fair share of taxes because without the government's DARPANet, we would not exist.
Yep.
That was then. Now they kind of got caught up in the nonsense a little bit. Okay, so that's one of the themes. How I call it losing heart. How conscious companies become unconscious over time, or can become unconscious over time. Okay, that's quite a lag. Okay, second pillar. I'm going to go a little faster now. Stakeholder integration. Now, here's an important blind spot. When I ask you, for example, who are your stakeholders in your life? What would you say? Who are your personal stakeholders?
My children,
And that's it.
well,
Okay.
my siblings.
Okay. So you can identify a set of them, right? And then I say, what about you?
Or
Who's
my,
going to take care of you?
okay, God.
God, yeah, but
No,
screw you.
joke.
No, but the fact is, you are your most important
Myself,
stakeholder, right? You have a duty. If you
Myself.
don't take care of yourself, you cannot take care of your children. You cannot do anything meaningful in the world. The most generous thing you can do for other people is to take care of yourself.
Correct.
Mentally, physically, emotionally, etc. Strengthen yourself, right? Well, the consciousness of the leader puts an upper limit on the consciousness of the organization, and it impacts everybody. Likewise, for companies, if you ask companies, they'll say customers, employees, one of them is number one is number two, and then investors, and then we have some others. And I say, what about the company itself? The company is its own most important stakeholder. Now, why do we need to say that? Because companies have not been investing in themselves. There's an interesting phenomenon going on in recent years. I think Jack Welch really pioneered it. Share buybacks. Public companies buying back their own shares in the market. Okay. Now, when I did my MBA, 79 to 81, in those days, most companies retained most of their earnings and reinvested them back in the business. And they might have given out 5-10% as dividends. But most earnings were reinvested back in the business. Now, you look at what happened over a 10-year period for the S&P 500, 91% of profits went to share buybacks and dividends. Only 9% reinvestment. Like I said, Jack Welch started this at GE and over the years, he bought back hundreds of billions of dollars worth of shares. What does that do? It reduces the number of outstanding shares and therefore increases the earnings per share and therefore increases the share price. Your share price goes up, which means your stock options are now worth a lot of money. If you have a stock option which is triggered at 15 and the share price is 12 and you do share buybacks and now it goes to 18, you might have made $3 million.
Yeah.
You didn't create any more value, right?
Increase the value.
But it's a way of gaming the system. Because now massive amounts of compensation are rooted in stock options, right? So you can see in some years, they were actually borrowing money from the bank to buy back your own shares and issue dividends. What does that mean? Going heavily into debt, right? Also means underinvesting in the future.
Well, part of it is also because cash was cheap.
Yeah, it was, you could make a case.
Yeah.
Right, at 4%, I can do
Right.
this and yeah, you could make a case for it, but you are starving the company of investment. I was shocked to see that 68% of S&P 500 companies don't spend any money on R&D. Do you think you have a long-term future without spending money in that area?
No,
Don't,
we
right?
need less money.
Gosh, do you know if that is similar now in 2024?
I don't. I mean, I just found it from one source, so I've not tracked that systematically, so.
It depends
But I
on
can't
the
imagine it has
sector.
changed. See, there's a small number of companies that are spending most of the money on R&D. It's Apple, it's Google, it's
Pharmaceutical.
Microsoft. Pharmaceutical is a little tricky. They hide a lot of marketing spending as R&D.
Yeah.
They pay doctors to do things, essentially
They
bribing them.
cannot survive.
They call it
without
R&D. That's true, but I'm just saying there's a funny accounting there.
Chill out. Strategy.
Don't get me started on drug companies. I almost wrote a book called Drugs Are Us about unethical marketing, in pharmaceuticals. It's a massive problem.
American pharmaceutical.
Well, even the Europeans are getting corrupted.
Now they're getting there.
So, okay, then come to spicy. Why spicy? This is the acronym for the stakeholder. I say, well, I come from India. Okay. Everything is about spice. Your shampoo has spice, your laundry detergent has spice, everything is about spice. And that's what Columbus was looking for when he bumped into this place, right? He's trying to get to India to get some spice.
There is no spice.
So it starts with society.
There is.
Society is our first stakeholder. We have to be part of the solution, not part of the problems for all of the challenges that we face, right? You see favelas in every city all across Latin America. Why is that? Why are those people living that way? Because the way in which we do business and how much we pay people, right? Can we create peace and prosperity through commerce? As partners, including our suppliers, we squeeze them as much as we can, get the best terms for ourselves, right? Most companies do that. And then they pay them 90 days, 120 days later. And meanwhile, they're struggling to meet their own payroll, and many of them go out of business. Can we treat them as genuine partners, have co-destiny relationships with them? Investors who only care about the returns versus investors who also care about the impact and the legacy that they're creating through those investments, how they're changing the world. Customers in marketing, we call them consumers. Our job is to make them consume as much as possible, whether they need it or not, whether it's good for them or not, whether they can afford it or not. Can we focus on the quality of their life and their well-being, right? Not just sell them whatever we can. Employees who are disengaged and disconnected versus people who are passionate and engaged and innovative and joyful and creative, and an environment that we have been steadily destroying versus one that we are restoring and replenishing and regenerating. So again, when you think about them as ways to make money for the investors, then you use them. But when you say that I want to create value for each of them and with each of them, and then you create value, much more value in the system as a whole when you do that. So many other positive benefits come from that. Oh, I skipped one slide altogether. Okay, yeah, maybe not. So again, I talked about earlier, when you have a shared purpose, it actually attracts and aligns your stakeholders. You get the right customers attracted. You don't have to use aggressive marketing to get all kinds of people. It's like a magnet. They'll show up. The right employees will show up. If I'm a foodie and I care about health, getting a job at Whole Foods is like an extension of who I am, right? If I care about the outdoors and I'm, I love camping and hiking, getting a job at Patagonia is like, it's not work, right? It's me, it's just me expressing myself, right? So it attracts the right stakeholders to us. And then of course, shared values connect stakeholders to each other. There's tremendous now tightness in that system, right? There's loyalty and value creation across. And then all of them do exist in a system. So we can think of each stakeholder one by one, but then recognize that they're all connected. So Whole Foods, you've got your purpose and values, you hire employees with congruent values, foodies who care about health, you pay them well, treat them well, high job satisfaction, They're highly motivated, lots of ideas, innovation. You treat your suppliers well, you get good products, good relationships. That results in delighted customers, sales grow, profits grow, investors are happy. Whole Foods returned 4,000% to its investors as a public company. From the time they went public in 78 to when they got acquired by the highest performing stock. And then you can keep going and you can then engage in all the acts of citizenship that you care about. Whole Foods have 5 different foundations. The Whole Planet Foundation that does micro lending in 65 countries to convert farmers from traditional chemical to organic farming. The Whole Kids Foundation that brings healthy lunches to schools. They plant vegetable gardens and create salad bars. The Whole Cities Foundation that is bringing healthy food to the inner cities which are food ghettos and all you have is junk food and convenience stores. Yeah.
Whole Foods, one of their biggest pillars is community.
Yeah.
And you didn't use that word, but
Well,
it's,
I include that in society. I include that in society as a big one, and then the immediate.
but the immediate community is very important to
Yeah.
them.
Race, community, and environmental responsibilities.
I had environment at the end, right?
There,
Well, here,
community.
oh yeah, this might be incomplete, but this is just an illustration. The key point here is that this is like system. It's like a clock. It only runs clockwise. Okay, you can't say I'm going to focus on maximizing profit and shareholder value. And then I'm going to give bonuses to employees and I'm going to donate to the local symphony hall. No, you have to do the things that create value before you harvest that value. And it has to go in that sequence. Right? Make sense? Okay. Leadership. To quote Peter Drucker again, there are only 3 things that happen naturally in organizations. There's friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else takes leadership. You could take the most thoughtful, conscious, loving, caring people, put them in a room, come back an hour later, what will you find? Friction, confusion, underperformance, okay? Until somebody steps into the role of leader, somebody takes on the awesome responsibility of leadership, which is to say, what are we trying to do here? What's possible? What's our vision? What can we create? And then how do we get there? What's our strategy to get there, right? It needs a leader to coalesce all of that extraordinary human potential into something worthwhile. So even in a world when more people are educated and conscious and caring, and all of those things are true, we are more intelligent than ever, we're more educated than ever, we're more informed than ever, we're more connected than ever, we're more empathetic than ever. We still need leaders to coalesce all of that into something meaningful. Leadership matters. Better leaders make for a better world. By the same token, bad leaders can destroy. What has taken decades or centuries to create can be destroyed by a bad leader within a matter of weeks or months. Okay, so leadership matters in our world. It's not just what happens 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. The way we lead impacts the way people live. What happens when people go home? What happens with their children? What happens in their relationships? There's an impact of leadership that goes beyond the workplace. This is Senator Warnock from Georgia. He was also the pastor of the Arizona Baptist Church, where Martin Luther King was the pastor. So he now preaches there. This is what he said about leadership. You cannot lead the people unless you love them. Is that true?
Yep.
Yeah. And you cannot love the people unless you know the people. How many leaders actually know people in their organization all the way down to the front lines? I don't mean each of them personally, but they know generally what life is like for people at the entry level. One of our CEOs who's on our board in Mexico, he goes down to the cafeteria and the bathrooms that the workers are using, right, to make sure that they're getting, because otherwise they have no idea what life is like down there. And you cannot love the people unless you cannot know the people unless you walk among the people. How many leaders actually do this? You see it in a show like Undercover Boss. You ever seen that?
Yes.
Yeah. Put on a mask, I know these guys, and then they spend a few weeks doing the work, different kinds of work at the entry level, and they come back, oh my God, these people are amazing, and the work is so difficult, and they are so dedicated, and they're struggling with so many things, and they don't have any money or resources, so they come back with this passion and understanding of what life is like. And then at the end, they rip off their thing and they say, oh, here's a $25,000 check for Mary because she's struggling with her mother's health, and here's something else. And then they go back to their penthouse. And they don't change the system that is creating all that suffering. and put a 3 bandages on, and then they left. You have to know the people and understand what's going on. And genuinely care about them. We expect our employees to love us. We have to love them first. How can you expect somebody to love you if you don't love them? The acronym here is selfless. I like this one the most of these acronyms because what's the opposite of selfless is selfish. Can you be a selfish human being and call yourself a leader?
No.
So what does it mean if you're a selfish human being? You're going to look at all the people that you lead and say, wow, I've got 30 people that I can use to achieve my own goals. Yeah. And for a selfish human being, it's about power and ego and money, right? So that's not a leader, that's a tyrant. A tyrant uses other people to fill their own ego-based needs. Every emperor from Alexander the Great, all of them, they're all tyrants and they're all using millions of people to satisfy their own unfillable hole in their being. Then egos act and create massive suffering in the process. You have to go beyond the narrow self. Viktor Frankl talked about, or Abraham Maslow talked about self-actualization as the peak of the human development, right? The motivations. Viktor Frankl said there's a level above that, which is self-transcendence, where you lose yourself. So it's about finding yourself, self-actualization, and then losing yourself in service of something greater than yourself. That is the ultimate source of fulfillment and joy and meaning in a human life. I believe Dr. Adizes actually met Viktor Frankl, and he's one of those monumental figures in this world. Have you read Man's Search for Meaning?
Yeah.
Of course.
Everybody here? That's great. I discovered that book when I was almost 50 years old, and nobody told me about it. So I bought 200 copies and I gave to everybody I know.
Which book?
Man's Search for Meaning. Please order it. We'll wait for 1 minute while you order.
Que lo escribas, por favor.
Victor Frank.
No, you're happy, really. Listen,
It's like,
you don't need to read any of my books. You should read Dr. H.R.'s books, but you read that book, okay?
Okay.
Very important. It's considered one of the 10 most important books ever written in the history of humanity by the Library of Congress, okay? Man's Search for Meaning. And then selfless stands for the qualities of a conscious leader. It starts with strength. You have to be strong to be a leader. Now, what do I mean by strength? Yeah, you need to be physically healthy. A lot of energy and stamina is needed. But more than that, you need to have moral courage and personal power. Personal power is that power that you source from within, from understanding who you are and what your life is about, and dedicating your life to that, having those unshakable values and the sense of purpose. Gandhi never had positional power. Gandhi was never elected to anything or appointed to anything in his entire life, and yet he had world-changing power that came from within. He was 5'2" and 90 pounds. This man brought down the British Empire, and he did so many other things. Personal power, nobody can take it away from you. I know people, when they lose their title, they retire, suddenly they shrink like a balloon. You take the air out, there's nobody there. Because all their power came from that position. The other people, doesn't matter what title they have. That's what we can cultivate, personal power and moral courage. They go hand in hand. Energy and enthusiasm is a given. You have to come from love and care. You have to be rooted in love. Strength without love is tyranny. Love without strength is ineffective. We had leaders in the last century, Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Mussolini. They almost destroyed human civilization. Extremely strong men did not come from love. We had leaders like Lincoln, Gandhi, Mandela, King, very strong and very loving. They're the ones who changed the world for the better, moved our species forward.
Can you repeat that phrase again? Strength without love is what?
It's tyranny.
It's tyranny.
And love without strength is ineffective. You need both. You don't have to choose one or the other. You have to be flexible to show up with the right approach in every situation. You have to have a long-term orientation beyond your lifetime, beyond your tenure as a leader. You have to have emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, and systems intelligence. These can all be cultivated. Your IQ is something you're born with, and it can only go down. Oh, sorry. This is the lag. I will give you these slides, okay? You'll have PDFs.
Yes.
Yeah. So IQ is something you're born with, it can only decline. But emotional intelligence, you have nothing, and you can actually 10x, 100x, you can understanding yourself and understanding others, right? Understanding how things are interconnected and interdependent, understanding the role of meaning and purpose in people's lives, including your own. I talked about this earlier. We are conscious leaders as a whole, they have integrated the split parts of themselves, the fractured parts, the masculine, feminine. As Martin Luther King said, we must be tough-minded and tender-hearted. It's not choosing, oh, I'm tough and you're tender. No, you need to be both. You're incomplete without the other piece of it, right? Which brings in the masculine, feminine, which I mentioned earlier. And this is now something that we're understanding a lot. And this was a book, I think it was by BCG, How Women and the Men Who Think Like Them Will Rule the Future. This is looking at masculine energy and feminine energy or values and understanding how important they are in leadership. So they did 60,000 interviews. 30,000 people were asked, what do you consider the qualities of great leaders? From a list. And 30,000 were asked, what do you consider to be feminine and what do you consider to be masculine? Because sometimes language is a little confusing. And then they correlated the two, and you can find here that the so-called feminine qualities are correlated with better leadership. In today's world, 50 years ago, probably not, right? The image of a leader was General George Patton, right? On the battlefield, screaming orders. But today it's different. You need to be expressive, reasonable, flexible, patient, collaborative, intuitive, right? Passionate and selfless. Vulnerable, yeah, those kinds of things, right? So it is related. Now, this is saying we need more women, but we also need men to get connected to their own side, right? The relational side. Men are more transactional versus relational. They also looked at the correlation with ethics and morality. It's even stronger. The joke is that if Lehman Brothers were Lehman Sisters, we could not have had a 2008. $38 trillion worth of wealth was wiped out because of crazy risk-taking on Wall Street. It's like a cowboy culture over there on Wall Street. Extreme risk-taking by mostly young men. Okay. And it's also correlated with happiness. Right? So this is what we need. Now, again, it's not saying we need to replace masculine with feminine. It's also saying we need to have both. Right? Have both of these, yin and yang, working together.
Well, part of what we have experienced, that is preventing this from happening is the binary approach of weakness versus strength, in which those we consider weaknesses.
Exactly. Exactly. So for me, for example, I had qualities like I was trusting, I was idealistic, I was very harmony-seeking or peace-loving growing up as a child. And my father, we come from the warrior caste in India, right? Which is very aggressive, very hyper-masculine. He told me, you need to be the opposite. You cannot trust anybody. Okay? You should not be idealistic. You need to be only pragmatic. You need to be rough and tough. Why don't you get into more fights? Right? So again, I came to see all of those as defects. It turns out that they are my strengths. Right? So, but we need to, again, anything taken too far can become a weakness. If you become too trusting, then you become gullible. But fundamentally, there's some, qualities there that you have to embrace. Not to say that all of those are bad. These are all good things too, right? We need those too. Mm-hmm. We need both, not one or the other. Okay, last pillar is culture. Here the acronym is tactile. Now this is what Drucker again said. Culture eats strategy for lunch. You may have heard this. It's almost a cliche now, right? I think it's still true. Yeah. Culture matters. Strategy matters too. We don't want to minimize strategy, right? But there are no secrets. Every MBA student knows the strategy of every big company in the world. Okay, we've got case studies about it. So strategy is not something that's going to, give you guaranteed success. But you cannot replicate those companies because the cultures are unique to each of them. The acronym I use here is tactile. Okay. Tactile. What is tactile? Something you can feel. Now, culture normally is considered invisible and intangible. Right? I'll go and take a picture of your culture. I can take a picture of happy people who are excited. It's tangible in that sense. So it's very tactile. You walk into a container store, Southwest Airlines, Patagonia, Wegmans, all of these cultures, you will feel the energy. You will feel the air of excitement. Right? You'll feel the love, the sense of purpose, the joy. It's very, very tangible. And you go into some of the less conscious company, everybody says, oh, God. No, it's like, there's no excitement. It's like going into a government office in India. Right. Okay, you start yawning as soon as you enter. All your energy is sucked out of you. Then it stands for the qualities of a conscious culture, and I'm not going to go into each of those in any detail, but I don't want to circle one of them, which is care. So again, love is in all the pillars. Okay, and that's the fundamental difference. A traditional business is built on self-interest alone. Self-interest of the owner, self-interest of the employee, self-interest of everybody, right? Conscious business adds love as a second pillar and adds purpose as a third pillar. Any stool which is only built on one pillar is not that stable, right? You need all of these. So the fundamental question that the founders of Whole Foods ask, can you build a business on love and care? They said, we look around at all of our friends who work for companies, they all hate their work. And they're tremendously stressed out. That's why we have a hallowed institution called Thank God It's Friday, right? TGI, oh my God, who doesn't agree with that? What does that mean in America? That means you go and get drunk. All the young people here, the minute they go to college, is all about getting drunk as often as possible. So you do it on Friday, then again you do it on Saturday, and then what happens? Sunday night comes around inevitably, and Monday morning comes around. What happens then? Heart attacks are 20% higher in the US and in the UK on Monday morning. 4 a.m. is the peak of heart attacks. I just saw a study from Sweden, 33% higher heart attacks on Mondays. It's interesting, in most audiences, when I put up this slide, people start laughing.
By the way, it's mostly men.
It's mostly men who laugh.
That
Who are dying?
that statistic refers to.
I don't, you know that or you're guessing?
No, I know that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Mostly men are dying on Mondays.
Most-
So the overall heart disease is as common in women now as it used to be. Men used to be much higher.
Well, but it's part of the problem that if you're a woman and you have any symptoms on a Monday and you come into an emergency room, they don't take it seriously because they're accustomed to, for that being a male inflicted problem.
But this is a very, very real phenomenon, okay? And I used to say, why do people laugh when they see this? And I realize it's because you cannot cry. What you want to do is cry.
Yeah.
It's the saddest thing to say about business. We are literally killing people. I mean, we can't, it's not socially acceptable to cry or to show those emotions, right? So we laugh. It's a defense mechanism. Jeffrey Pfeffer at Stanford did a study and he estimated, he analyzed a lot of data from different sources that 120,000 Americans die every year from stress connected to work. And in China now, they had to invent a new word called gualaozi, which means death from overwork. 600,000 Chinese die every year from too much work. When you're working 6-7 days a week, 14, 16 hours a day, as many people do, literally people are working themselves to death. And the next time you buy a product that says made in China and it's only $8.99, you say, why is it so cheap? The real cost isn't in here. The cost of human suffering is the highest cost that we incur in many companies. And that doesn't show up on any income statement or balance sheet. If it did, then those profits wouldn't look so great. Does it have to be this way? Do we have to kill people to make money? And if you don't kill them, we bore them to death. This is Gallup's employee engagement. I'm sure you're all familiar with Gallup's data, right? Highest in the world is the US, 32%. It's went down a little bit. Global average is 23. Think about that. 77% of people worldwide are not engaged in their jobs. They can't wait to get out.
Wow.
And there's a huge financial drain because of that. People who are disengaged, right? All that productivity loss, but more than that, it's a human tragedy. And you can see in conscious companies, best practice according to Gallup, we have 70% engagement. Some of the conscious companies we've looked at, 90+%. Imagine the difference between 90 and 30. How much, not just productivity, but ideas and creativity and customer care and all of those things are extraordinarily different.
This is according to who?
Which one?
Gallup.
Gallup.
That was Gallup on the left, the right was our Firms of endearment study. So as Freud said, love, work, and play are the cornerstones of our humanness. Defines us as human beings. Many humans will work when they don't have to. Why? Because work gives meaning to your life. Work allows you to become immortal, leave a legacy of something. Right? All these books will live forever. Right? My question was very simple. Why can we not combine these things? Why do we have to separate? They're compartmentalized, right? Love is at home, work is over here, play with your friends. Why can't work be fun? Why can't I love what I do? Why can't I love the people I work with, the love people I serve? There are many kinds of love. Not all romantic love, right? There's agape, we call it, right? And that was the basis of my research, that book, Forms of Endearment. People use words like these to describe these businesses. Hence the hokey title, Forms of Endearment. And then, we did the financial analysis at the end. And that's different. Most business books that look at performance and try to understand the drivers of performance, they typically start with high-performing companies, and then they go back and say what made them so, right? So Good to Great, or many of these books are like that. We found companies that were humanistically high-performing in terms of meeting these 4 pillars of conscious capitalism. And then we said, okay, what does that mean for investors? Now, they're paying their people very well. Costco was paying double of Walmart. Okay, they're providing much better benefits, healthcare, Costco, Starbucks, all of these companies, right? They're investing in their customer experience. They're paying their suppliers well, not squeezing them. They're investing in their communities. They're investing in the environment. And they were paying taxes at an average rate of 34%, much higher than the overall average for companies. So we said maybe there's less left over at the end of the day for investors, because investors get paid last. What we actually found was these companies outperformed dramatically. Original research was 9-1 over 10 years. Second edition of the book, we had more companies, more data, almost 8-1 over 20 years. Dramatic outperformance. These companies are very profitable, even though they're not trying to maximize profit, yet they make more profit. The people who try to be as happy as possible are not the ones who are the happiest. The people who have a life of meaning and purpose are the ones who are happiest. Right? Likewise with profit. Profit cannot be pursued. Profit is the outcome.
What's that measuring?
This is measuring for public companies the cumulative returns if you invested in these companies, right? They're compared to the S&P 500 and the Good to Great companies, which are only about financial performance. Right?
And the Good to Great, the ones are valued by the philosophy of Good to Great.
Yeah, the book Good to Great had
Good to
11
Great,
companies in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were selected because they outperformed the market 3x over at least 14
10x.
years.
Yeah.
3x over 14 years is my memory.
Yeah.
Right? And they went from good, average to great. And then I tracked them over time. And then I said, by the way, Philip Morris was one of those companies. They were great for investors. How good are they for the 6 million people who died this year from cancer, lung cancer? The billion people who will die this year, this century. And the $600 billion we are spending every year on public health system around the world to deal with the consequences of tobacco. So you're not so great.
What was the name of the book?
For
something
Forms of Endearment,
Yeah.
which were the conscious companies. And you can see another, this is a more updated up to 2019, our performance compared to all of these other indices, right? So these companies are very profitable, and that is important. Profits are necessary. Profit is a social good. It is socially irresponsible not to be profitable. Society does not function without corporate profits. Governments cannot generate wealth. Governments can only tax and spend the wealth generated by business, but it matters how we make the money. Because yeah, you can make the money by squeezing your employees and giving them heart attacks, and damaging the health of your customers, and destroying your communities, and damaging the environment, and you made your money. Well, that's not a business, that's a parasite. You have sucked value out of all of these entities to keep it for yourself. A true business creates value for everybody. Everybody's better off because of that business. In fact, businesses create but also destroy many kinds of wealth. We act like money is the only game in town. There are many games in town. And we impact many of them, right? So it's intellectual capital, all the innovations. How much trust exists in society, emotional well-being, love and care, not fear and stress, meaning and purpose through my work, impact on the culture, impact on our bodies, impact on the environment. Conscious business has a positive impact on all these areas. Traditional business says we focus on making money, and therefore everything else is a side effect. I'm sorry, there's nothing on this planet called a side effect. We do things and there are effects. Now you can call them side effects if you don't want to deal with them. You put them in very small letters, say them very fast. If you watch the evening news and you see those ads for medicines, it'll help you with your rest leg syndrome, but it might kill you in 8 different ways. There's no side effect. We have to do business with a spectrum of positive effects and recognize that we are all in the same boat. Now, boat has many holes in it. This planet is one system. There's no there. I can't send my manufacturing to China and say, oh, my air is better and my water is better. What about in China? There are kids putting on gas masks to go to school. And there are clouds of toxic gases coming over California now. It says made in China. It's one system. So it's been a 20-year journey for me now, and I recognize more I study it, the more I realize it works and works for everybody. And there's some fundamental business reasons, which I'm not going to go into now, but you can see those. Okay, why? In the beginning, we thought, how is this possible? These companies outperform and they do all this. Now we understand there's a lot of things that they're doing that result in superior business outcomes. So, as we think about this movement, it's not isolated. There are many other parallel movements that are out there. CSR was all the thing when we started, right? ESG is nowadays talked about a lot. Shared value with Michael Porter from Harvard. Inclusive capitalism from Lynn Rothschild. Stakeholder capitalism is becoming commonly used and talked about. B Corps, B Team, ethical, etc., etc. I think all of these, we believe, all of these are in a way part of conscious capitalism, right? Because all those elements are included here, right? And there's a conscious case that you have to make for anything that we do. It should not just be a business case. You need a societal case. If we don't do this, there will be riots and revolutions. We don't change the way we do business. Planetary case. I don't need to say more about that. The human case. What's happening to our people? What's happening to their well-being, their children, the future? And of course, the business case. We have to have all of them, not just the business case to do anything. Right? I'm just going to wrap up this part by briefly talking about something that we're working on. As I described, we have 4 pillars. And now we're doing a second edition of the Conscious Capitalism book next year, and we're thinking about adding a 5th pillar, which is kind of an integrative pillar. Right? What is conscious strategy? To me, ultimately, it's about the purest version of each of those other 4 pillars. That becomes a source of competitive advantage, which is what strategy is about. Building and sustaining competitive advantage in the marketplace by having a deeper, more meaningful purpose, by truly listening deeply and creating value for stakeholders, right? Having your leadership and culture. So in a way, it's kind of the integrative piece, just like you have in PA, right? It's the integrative piece, I think that is important. So traditionally, if we've been to business school, we learned about competitive strategy, right? Which is about the actions and decisions we take to gain a competitive advantage over our rivals. That's what it's about. It focuses typically on outperforming competitors by things like what are called the generic strategies, right? Cost leadership, differentiation, or focus. These are Michael Porter's generic competitive strategies. Most companies will choose one of those paths based on that theory. So the primary goal of competitive strategy is to maximize shareholder value by prioritizing profitability, market share, and efficiency. The goal is very clear, right? It is a determinative goal, right? As you framed it. Now, what would conscious strategy be different than that? So it's a business approach that integrates the principles of conscious capitalism into the strategic decision-making process. It focuses on getting competitive advantage by creating long-term value for all stakeholders while remaining true to purpose, higher purpose, and then ethical values and commitment to sustainability. And so it seeks to harmonize profit with purpose, ensuring that business success is aligned and positively correlated with positive societal impact. Very often these things become negatively correlated. You start to lose sense of purpose and become more profit-oriented. Right? But profit and purpose ultimately serve each other. Whole Foods, as a $20 billion company, can do far more to realize its purpose than it could do as a $20 million company when it only had 2 stores. Right? So the more profitable it is, the more it can actually implement its purpose. But we view them as a polarity where both sides are necessary and they reinforce and support each other. There's some philosophical differences. So conventional strategy really is rooted in the idea of business as a kind of war. Many of the strategic, think about the language of strategy came from the military. Right? Strategy, tactics, right? Headquarters, front lines, all of these are military terms. And we borrowed kind of that mindset. So in the military, your goal is the domination and destruction of the enemy. So the enemy is your competitor. Your employees are your soldiers, right? Customers are kind of the territory or the prize that you're trying to win. So that has been a very corrosive mindset. Business is not war. There are other limiting beliefs as well. Business was seen as a kind of game by some people. Right? It's not a game. Business was seen by economists and academics as a math problem. It's all about the equations, right? And you're trying to capture everything in those. It's not a math problem, right? Business is a deeply human activity. So traditional approach treats every stakeholder as a potential competitive threat. So if you look at Michael Porter's 5 forces model, the 5 forces are basically saying that you have your customers, they become too strong, then they can backward integrate and start to compete with you. They can start making what you're selling to them. Your suppliers can actually forward integrate and sell what you're selling. So they're both threats to your position, right? And then you've got new entrants that could come in. Those are threats. Of course, your competitors are your bitter enemies, right? And there are substitutes out there. And the whole premise of that is that we need to reduce each of these as a threat so that we can earn higher than normal returns, right, within the company. So again, the mindset matters. If you view your customer as a potential threat, it creates a different kind of relationship. If you view your suppliers through that lens, it creates a different kind of relationship. And it precludes the possibility of cooperation. So competitors are mortal enemies to be vanquished, and you are seeking sustained competitive advantage by minimizing that competitive threat and doing things specifically here to weaken them in some way. Now, in conscious strategy, you see the business as a family and also as an interconnected living organism, right? It has all of these different elements to it. It treats every stakeholder as a partner in purpose and a source as well as beneficiary of connected multifaceted value creation. Competitors are viewed as respected rivals that catalyze mutual growth and improvement, and as fellow travelers. It was very interesting. This one was something I had not thought about, but when Walmart entered the natural and organic space in a big way some years ago, they made a big announcement that now we're going to dedicate a certain amount of space to natural and organic foods in our stores. And I was with John Mackey at the time, and I asked him, John, what do you think of this announcement? He said, well, it's good news and bad news. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, it's bad news in the sense that Walmart is a tough competitor and they'll put a lot of downward pressure on price. So we'll have to compete with them, and that's going to be challenging. But on the other hand, it's great news. So how is it great? He said, well, our purpose is for more people to have access to healthier and nutritious food in the world. And now Walmart is going to help us achieve our purpose. So now they're a fellow traveler with us. And ultimately, that's his goal. He wants the entire food industry to become like that, right? So that we achieve that purpose. Same thing when John met Doug Rao. How many of you know Trader Joe's?
Yeah, of course.
Everybody loves Trader Joe, right?
Yes.
So when John and Doug Rao, who was the president of Trader Joe, they met at our conference in Boston for the first time. Of course, they competed with each other for decades. And their first words to each other were the same. They said, I love you, but I hate you. Why? Because Trader Joe has to compete with Whole Foods on nutrition and the health claims. And Whole Foods has to compete with Trader Joe on price and on some variety and all the interesting foods that they bring from all over the world, right? So they say, it's hard for me to compete with you, and you make me better every day. And our food is getting more affordable, and your food is getting more nutritious, right? So it's that kind of respect that you can have for your competitors. Patagonia and REI, we had the CEO of REI, Sally Jewell, at our conference, and she said, my competitor is Best Buy. It's not REI. REI is my fellow traveler. Best Buy is selling you all the screens to keep you inside the house, and you're only spending 1 hour in nature a week and 52 hours in front of the screen, right? So again, it's a different lens. And then you seek sustained cooperative advantage, not just competitive advantage, right? This is what, again, as I said earlier, we are strongest when we cooperate with each other. Yeah, there's an element of competition, but we are competing based upon our ability to cooperate, how much we can cooperate, as opposed to explicitly trying to undermine and weaken, right, through a variety of means, the enemy, so-called enemy. There is no enemy. Right? They're fellow travelers. And by strengthening heart and head relationships with each stakeholders. Right? So it's not just transactional element, it's really a deeper connection that we strive to have with them. And so this is, in a way, what's called an infinite game. And I think you were kind of talking about that with Adizes Institute, right? We're trying to play an infinite game, which is that we need to be profitable so that we can keep doing what we're doing, right? The goal is not to win the game. The goal is to continue playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's this problem relates a lot. Yeah, Simon wrote a book about this, but the original book was by somebody else. There was a book called Finite and Infinite Game.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the author, but Simon took that idea and kind of built upon it. But yeah, it is that idea, right? So if you think about traditional strategy, a finite game, which is about winning, right? There's a winner and therefore there are many losers. It's about competition. It's about achieving those specific short-term goals. Traditional competitive strategy focuses on beating rivals, maximizing profits, and maximizing market share, which are all finite objectives. Whereas an infinite game focuses on long-term vision rather than short-term victories. It embodies this by prioritizing sustainable growth, ethical practices, and long-term value creation over immediate financial gains. The aim is not to win in the traditional sense, but to keep the organization thriving and evolving forever. And that's pretty much what you were saying, right? This is the goal, right? If you don't do that, everything dies and everything stops. So can we continue playing, right? So that's the kind of game we want to play with business and in our lives. Okay, so just to close out this part before I get to the synergy with Adizes. So as I said earlier, traditional business is only about the mind and the wallet. Right? You agree with that?
Yeah.
The head and the wallet. And conscious business tries to bring in the human in between. That's where everything that human beings do should involve our heart and our spirit. The most extraordinary things we do come from here, right? Not from just, we need all of them. So my newest acronym is this, WISH. This is what I wish. So the wallet, which is financial intelligence, which is very important. Again, a constraint. We have to have that, right? Otherwise, we don't survive. And then we have the intellect, analytical intelligence. And we also want to bring in the soul and spirit, and we want to bring in the heart. So have all of those working, save time. Like, I think the role of the CEO now is to evolve, continuously evolve the company and its leaders and its stakeholders to higher states of consciousness. In that sense, CEO, I think, stands for conscious evolution. So starting with themselves. John says every time I get stuck, Whole Foods gets stuck. I break through to the next level of consciousness, Whole Foods breaks through to the next level of consciousness. And even uses the phrase, Whole Foods is my ashram. That is where I do my deepest spiritual work.
Right. I mean, you said it yourself that CEOs are one of the professions that have the highest rate of crazy people.
Sociopaths.
Sociopaths.
Psychopaths, yeah.
Psychopaths. So how are you gonna get them to be conscious if they are psychopaths?
Yes, so again, a sociopath is probably beyond our reach, but it's only maybe 20%, I think. The number. Yeah. The question really is, how do we select, develop, and elevate people to positions of leadership? Because power and virtue need to go together. But in most organizations, they do not. Because the most power-hungry people are the least virtuous. And the most virtuous people do not seek out power. And we have boards of directors and others that are populated by traditionally minded leaders who end up putting somebody in place, right, that is going to continue that. So this becomes really critical. Who gets to be a leader in our system? And are we looking at their spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence? There was a study that was published, I saw the data in the Harvard Business Review. They looked at emotional intelligence correlated by level in the organization, okay? And they found it was lowest at the CEO, emotional intelligence, then went up a little bit with their direct reports, and then went up a little bit more until you reach middle management, and then went down again. You know, that curve needs to look like this. It needs to be highest. The higher you go, the more you need emotional intelligence. I mean, Daniel Goleman's work has popularized that idea. EQ matters. IQ is kind of a commodity now. Everybody is smart, okay? Right. Human beings are increasing intelligence at the rate of 3 to 4% a decade for the last 8 decades. There's there's something called the Flynn effect. You can watch a TED talk on this. James Flynn is an intelligence researcher. He looked at the raw IQ data because it gets standardized to 100 every decade, so you can always compare yourself to the average. But if you look at the raw data, it's been increasing at 3 to 4% every decade for 8 years. So you compound that over 8 decades, the person with an average IQ today of 100, 80 years ago, IQ would have been 127. They would have been in the top 2% of intelligence on this planet. Today, they're average. Yeah. Okay, so IQ is a given. These other elements are ones with that we have to look for.
Yeah, I do seriously about that.
Yeah.
Do you know who Anita Roddick was?
Body Shop.
Anita Roddick.
Yes, we do know.
She was the founder of the Body Shop.
Right.
And And she saw every store for the coffee shop, not only to sell cosmetics, was an outlet for values. They will have big posters about women rights and they're not to deal with the developing nations to buy, She had the whole department, the strongest department in her organization. And clients. It was a vision and values department. Their job was to continuously worry about vision and values and how to take care of society, how to take care of the customers, and how to take care of. But for her, profits for strength.
Yeah.
And she was fighting marketing, by the way.
Yeah.
Marketing was forbidden in her company. We don't market. We just do the best product at the best price and sell it by itself. So she had a department. Well, she was the evolution officer as a department.
Yeah, we need more of that. It's not common. We don't see that enough. So again, this is a way of living and thinking and being in business where everybody matters and everybody wins. Somebody is losing in our system. In most companies, there are many people who are losing. Part-time employees, the frontline employees, maybe the suppliers are getting squeezed, communities are, there are too many losers. Some people are winning a lot and many people are paying the price. That's not okay. Everybody matters and everybody needs to win. Even the part-time person at the lowest level, they need to have a pathway for progress and growth. And they need to be treated with respect and dignity and paid not only a living wage, but a dignified wage today and a pathway to growth. Not only, as we say, horizontal, but vertical growth as well. Okay, now I will switch gears to the potential synergies. Again, I am a novice in your world, in your approach. I've only had a small amount of exposure for a couple of days. But here's what I could see as some potential synergies between the two movements, fostering sustainable and purpose-driven organizational growth. It's not supposed to take this long. Okay, so integrating them for organizational success and societal flourishing. So I believe if we can integrate these things and figure out where they connect, it can create a robust framework for organizations that are aiming for sustainable growth as well as ethical and purpose-driven operations. So I think, as you said, we're emphasizing from the start, these dimensions, right? You are enabling any company with any kind of purpose to do it better. And we're saying it matters what your purpose is and what your values are, right? So we're coming at it with sort of a bias towards certain sets of values. Because we don't want to empower a company. I mean, I can empower Philip Morris and they can kill more people with cancer more quickly by being more successful, right? Some companies, the more successful they get, the worse the world gets. I look at 3G Capital out of Brazil. We were talking yesterday about Lehman, right? And Brazil. With that company, I believe the more they grow, the more they spread suffering. They take over a company, they lay off 31% of the people, they put everybody else on aggressive cost cutting and EBITDA targets. People burn out, they get stressed out. The products, they don't care about the health and well-being of their customers. I experienced this directly when I work with Kraft, and Kraft was on a journey to reinvent itself after 100 years. And they come up with a great purpose, and they're going to now, they recognize that highly processed foods like Velveeta and Tang and Oscar Mayer are not the future. The CEO's kids came back to after Christmas. He said, all my adult children told me, Dad, we don't buy any of your stuff. We don't eat like that anymore, So again, it matters, right? We have to have those elements in place. In the traditional approach, actually, we can empower companies to do more harm more efficiently. I don't think that's okay. I think we are all hands on deck. We need everything to be. So I think with the Adizes methodology, once you get them out of the crisis of dysfunction, next stage is I'm reminded of the language used by Viktor Frankl. He said that Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung are practicing depth psychology. They're helping you overcome your neuroses and psychoses and dysfunction and all of that. I'm trying to take you to where you can be. The height psychology. How can you be everything that you're capable of being, right? Fully realize your potential on the upside. So Adizes provides the practical tools for navigating change and maintaining long-term viability, while conscious capitalism, in a way, is a philosophy. It's a moral and philosophical foundation that aligns these tools with the greater good of all stakeholders. Together, they offer a holistic, purpose-driven, and resilient approach to organizational transformation. They can foster organizations that are not only highly effective, but also deeply conscious and humane. So those are the elements that we think could be added here. So if I look at the different components, this is the life cycle, right, that Adizes has. So I look at our pillar of purpose and how that has synergy with the idea of sustainable growth. So Adizes say organizations must stay adaptable, innovative, efficient, and effective to navigate that life cycle and endure indefinitely. You don't have to go into, companies can live forever. They don't have to go into that decline and death phase. How do we keep that infinite game going? Conscious capitalism, we say purpose-driven businesses focus on long-term value creation beyond profit of multiple kinds, not just financial, intellectual, social, emotional, physical, right, cultural, ecological well-being, all of those. So the synergy potentially here could be that a clear sense of purpose helps sustain an organization's long-term vitality by giving meaning to its innovation, administration, all those elements, right? Are they aligned with purpose? Are they actually helping us achieve our purpose? The Adizes approach ensures that this purpose is operationalized, maintained, and evolves through those different life stages. So again, we don't talk about the stage of the company when we talk about purpose, but I think that's important, right? And how do we sustain it and evolve it? Because purpose is not static. Purpose is evolutionary. It should align with where the world is and where our company is now, compared to when we started 100 years ago, 50 years ago, whenever it is, right? So it needs to evolve. The second one here is between mutual trust and respect and what we call conscious culture and all the elements of that. There's strong overlap there, but maybe some additional dimensions. So Adizes, of course, MTNR is key to collaboration and problem solving, and we talk about trust, authenticity, caring, etc., as part of that tactile, right? So what I see here as synergy is that first of all, MTNR helps operationalize the principles of conscious culture. So that's very much in harmony. By systematically embedding mutual trust and respect within organizations, companies can build the type of high trust, stakeholder focused environments that we envision. So again, it's a way of bringing that to life and making it happen. And this can create a more cohesive, engaged, and joyful workforce. And my thought was that maybe this MTNR could include caring, mutual trust, caring, and respect. Now, you talked about how almost it's a synonym to talk about caring and mutual trust and respect. I think that's something we can think about. I think maybe there is a dimension of caring which is in addition to or separate from mutual trust and care. I don't have to mutual trust and respect rather. But I have to think about that because you planted a seed. I mean, is it redundant or is it in fact an additional dimension? Because we talk about trust and caring as two separate things. They're not this stuff actually. So the next one is around those dimensions, those different aspects, PAE and I. We need to have all of those within the leadership team. And then what we refer to as conscious leadership, which is about, we talked about strength, love, being self-aware, and of course, having all those emotional and spiritual systems, intelligence, etc. So what could be the synergy here? So conscious leaders who are aligned with purpose and care about stakeholders can more effectively embody the roles in the PAEI model. That's a hypothesis. That framework can ensure that conscious leaders don't become imbalanced by focusing on one area at the expense of others. So it is pointing out blind spots or things that we may need to shore up in our teams. And conscious capitalism, moral and ethical grounding ensures that leadership remains aligned with purpose and service stakeholders.
While you were doing that, I was thinking exactly that how we can, what they came up with. I think associates should think about it, all the same message to a professional director. When we do a mission of a company, we look at what business are we in, how is the environment changing, physical, legal, economic environment, and what values do we have. Then when we look at values, we can improve it. And here's how, in light of what happened here, here's how we can improve it already. We should ask them to accumulate list of all the stakeholders. Then, what are the needs of the stakeholders? Which of these needs are need to satisfy, which are nice to satisfy? Which are deterministic goals, which are constrained goals? And then in light of it, which values do we need to drop?
Wow.
Which values do we need to develop?
Yeah.
And which values do we need to keep? Because that will be now enriching that part of the mission definition. And that will make it much closer to what we're talking about.
And that's the values and maybe even the purpose. I mean, in the organization statement, we also work on the purpose, and we can definitely help build a more holistic purpose, right?
But then to find out where can I put capitalism on the value system. So that will be part of it. Because when we do the values, we do the supervision. What do you want to drop because of the business? And what do you want to keep because of the business? Now we're going beyond that. What do you want to do with the society? Because now you look at all the stakeholders. We start, who are the stakeholders? And I made a list for myself, because it might change from company to company. You have customers, you have investors, workers, employees, the community where we reside, the environment, what would they represent it? Look, something very interesting. In New Zealand, they have a law that rivers, mountains, forests are legal entities. And they can sue you. The forest can sue you for violating the forest. The river can sue you for polluting it. So now I'm going to say the environment is to be represented too, okay, in our discussion. Now they have also a need. What is their need? Now let's find out how do we develop a common denominator between them, common interest between them, how do we, what is need to, what is constrained, and what is the right balance. And these are the values that we should generate in order to come to a mission. And our mission now is going to be impregnated with values which we did not do until now. Until now, all our values were business values. Should we sell on credit or not? Should we give big loans or not? No. Now we are going beyond that. What do the environment want? What do the stock, what the community, local community want? I mean, that's what we should be talking about.
I think suppliers are missing from your list.
By the way, it only happened to me in Russia, unintentionally. The biggest bank of Russia, Sberbank, $15 billion in tokens, 1250,000 employees. I was giving that like a small lecture, you know, muscles, brain, heart, and the future is the heart. And that was it. They changed the definition of what business they're in. We're not in the banking business now. We're in the business of improving the quality of life of our customers. That's why we give them a loan. Now, what else can we do for them to improve the quality? They redefine the business to be they're in. Very interesting.
And that can often create much more growth opportunities. So for Mars Pet Care, for example, Mars was just about selling pet food, right? In cans or in bags, dry food or wet food. And then they decided to adopt a purpose, make the world better for pets. And now that's opened up a whole bunch of different avenues for them. We're working in cities to make them more pet friendly. They have an incubator to have more businesses that are going to make the world better for pets. They're starting to sell other kinds of services like collars and others that track the health and well-being of pets. So it opens up, when you think about purpose, it creates many more value creation opportunities than if you're thinking more narrowly just in terms of the products and markets that you're in. By the way, Ecuador has also adopted that. Nature has rights. There are about 30 places in the world right now. There's a whole global group that allows that. This one is between collaborative problem solving and stakeholder orientation. So again, a little bit about what you're talking about there, Dr. Adizes, which is about including all of the stakeholders in the decision-making process. So a lot of conscious companies use a couple of methodologies. One is called appreciative inquiry, and the other one is called future search. So every 5 years or so, Whole Foods has done a future search. So they bring together all of their stakeholders customers, employees at every level, board members, suppliers, community members, activists for different causes that are out there, etc. And then for 3 or 4 days, they dream about what is the next evolution of Whole Foods. What is, what do we all need to become? And many of the best ideas come from non-executives. They come from customers. Like the idea for the whole kids foundation came from a parent who said, you have to do something about the horrible food our kids are getting at lunch. So why is that our job? Well, if you don't do it, nobody will do it. So they took it on. Right? So again, an appreciative inquiry is a similar methodology that includes all of the stakeholders, and then you get buy-in from day one. You don't have any challenges later on to implement because they were part of the formation of those ideas. Okay. So the synergy here is that participative problem solving can include all of those stakeholders, right? And it values inclusivity in decision making, ensuring that solutions are not only practical and effective, but also morally sound and aligned with the interests of all parties. And companies can ensure that the needs of diverse stakeholders are understood and integrated. So, covers that. I think I have one more here. The long-term health of the organization and future-proofing the business, which is what we're talking about in conscious strategy. So organization must remain adaptable and avoid decline. Conscious strategy seeks to sustain a company's competitive advantage by staying true to its purpose and its values. And okay, so the combination ensures that noble ideals are reflected in daily operations and strategic initiatives. Again, that's sort of the core competence of this approach, right? All of the ideas are actually showing up in the operations. The life cycle approach makes sure that the strategy will evolve as the company grows and matures. And conscious businesses can apply the life cycle insights to ensure that their strategies evolve, which is kind of looking at it from the outside. Those two are kind of redundant. And additionally, it's balancing various management goals to ensure that the needs to be direction remains. Okay, so I think you get the idea what I'm thinking here. Again, all of this is just like one day old thinking. Okay, so makes sense. Just as a starting point to get some conversations going. So in conclusion, these are the 5 sources of synergy that we identified here. So injecting purpose into that conversation in a very explicit way, and then bringing in caring as part of the cultural element, bringing in the idea of those 4 roles into conscious leadership, then problem-solving approach with all the stakeholders, and sustaining health and vitality throughout that life cycle as your strategy evolves. So together, these 2 things can create a holistic, purpose-driven, and resilient approach to organizational transformation, and then sustaining that over time. Last slide, I think I have on this. So from Adizes to conscious capitalism is the structural and managerial tools necessary to implement the higher purpose and stakeholder orientation. And going in the other direction, infuse the practical frameworks that you have with a deeper ethical context and societal focus. So Adizes can operationalize the aspirations of conscious capitalism, while conscious capitalism can provide the ethical compass and preservation of riches. That makes sense? Yeah. I'll just take 5. Yes.
Yeah, the thing that came to mind as you're presenting was that I see a lot of what I see, what I observe in the marketplace is organizations come to the market with a higher level of consciousness, and then they develop a lot of goodwill because they're not profit focused, and then they develop a big sort of following, and then the moment they get that big following, so venture capital or big corporation buys them out, and then they quickly lose. Like, I don't know, I don't really know the story of Whole Foods, but are they still maintaining that sort of art after being bought by Amazon? And what?
Yes, to a large degree, they have been able to, but I think that's a general thing that you're pointing out that I just did a talk on this somewhere called losing heart. Conscious companies that lose their way and sort of revert back to, less conscious way of being. And that can happen if you appoint the wrong leader. Somebody comes in with a very financially focused approach, or it can happen because of activist shareholders attack the company and make short-term goal of increasing the share price, and they buy 9% of your shares, and they can issue proxies, and that's how Whole Foods ended up essentially being held hostage by the partners. Came on Wednesday with the list of demands. On Monday, you need to fire 6 out of 11 board members. You need to announce a massive layoff, and you need to say we are up for sale to publics or sons of and do all of this or else. And John said, "What do you mean or else?" He said, "You'll see." If they do all kinds of, they'll put, it's almost like a political campaign. They'll put things in the media, they'll pick up your past and create a scandal, like they do, really dirty stuff. And that afternoon, John gave an interview to the Texas Monthly magazine and said, "These guys are greedy bastards." Literally, you can look it up. So they're greedy bastards. This is owned by a guy who just bought a $170 million house on Long Island. All he cares about is money. They don't care about our purpose, our employees, our customers, or anything, our values, right? They just bought some shares and they want to see those shares increase in price and they're destroying. So Whole Foods is my baby and they're trying to kill my baby. And I have to kill them first. Wow. So
What happened?
great interview on Thursday, but Friday night they had to fight to because they knew that they were kind of painted into a corner. This company was going to get destroyed. And we had my initial conversations with Bezos earlier. And so they went that weekend, they hammered out, and by Sunday morning they had the agreement, right? So they said it's a lesser of two evils. They would have preferred to stay alive, but our markets are becoming somewhat hostile to some of the longer thinking,
Yes.
infinite gain playing conscious companies, because activist investors are given too much power in our system. And that's why being a public company now is a hazard. The number of public companies has gone down by 50% in the last 10, 15 years. Because many companies are choosing to go private again, or they're choosing never to go public because it's not worth it. You can destroy the culture and can do all the other things. You're just looking at the share price. And how depressed you are or happy you are depends on the share prices. So it's a real challenge. We need a vibrant public market. And yet public markets are becoming hostile. There was a new stock exchange that was floated a couple of years ago from the long-term stock exchange, where your voting power depends on how long you own the share. If you buy yesterday, like an activist investor would have no voting power. So they speculate. But if you're a true investor, you buy and hold, then you get more voting power. That was the idea. It hasn't taken off. But we need more.
And you succeeded to penetrate the Kremlin, the business world, culture business.
So Rebecca Henderson is there. She took the course called Capitalism, which is an electric code, but now it's taken by 20% of the state. So on any car, there are individual professors that are doing that. The big obstacle remains the finance department. Many business schools that in working on much more. They still don't file. Still tough a lot. Okay, I just want to take a few minutes to tell you about what we're doing at Tech. We have the Conscious Enterprise Center that Tech has invested in. I view this as a gift from Tech to the world in a way. Tech has invested a lot of resources in this to spread these ideas, not only in Mexico, but ultimately for this to become a hub for knowledge creation and dissemination related to being a conscious business. And our purpose is to transform business education and companies by elevating consciousness in leaders to elevate human flourishing, heal the planet, and create a more fair and prosperous society. Now we're talking here about transforming consciousness. We don't mention here actually helping them change, although we are doing that, but it's not listed in our purpose, right? It's not enough to just awaken somebody, then you have to help them on their journey, which we are trying to do as well. So we have these 4 different pillars of research, teaching, exec ed, and consulting, and then outreach, which is creating more awareness in the world. And these are some of our goals in terms of reaching students, not only at Tech, but across business schools around the world, faculty, starting internally, but then also doing workshops on this for faculty to teach conscious business at other universities, and then business leaders as well. This is our advisory board. This is our team. You can see we have some gaps right now. We're still looking for a research director. We have people in the teaching area, the executive education, consulting, outreach, all of that. We do have a podcast. And for our students now, this is pretty unusual, extraordinary. I don't know the university has anything like this. Our students can opt to take a minor in conscious business, so they get an entire semester fully focused just on conscious business. 200 hours of classroom instruction and 200 hours in the field, working with a formative partner, as they call them, a company where they can actually help trying to implement some of these ideas.
You said that again, the last two sentences.
To help those companies start to implement these ideas. So the students are working in teams with these companies, taking the ideas of capitalism into each of those companies.
Interns?
They're not interns.
Not as much. I mean, basically, they're we have this concept of formative partner, which basically is a professor, a company or organization, and the student. It's like a triangle in that formal process, the models. And basically do a diagnose and they do a small implementation of specific.
So this internship?
But it's not full-time. I mean, it's project-based.
It's a lot of time, 200 hours and 200 hours in the classroom. I mean, that's like 5 full courses. So they're really going deep in all of these 4 pillars.
It's an optative right now. For example, we have in 10 campuses. Students choose.
So we have about 130 professors now at Tech who are teaching in conscious business in some aspect of it. We also have these 2-day executive education programs called Journey to Conscious Capitalism. We take about 25 to 30 people representing about 5 or 6 companies. So you have a team of people, CEO and some of their C-suite, coming to these 2-day programs where we give them a sufficient exposure to the 4 pillars and sort of an applied hands-on exercises and other things that they can assess where they are today and then start making some plans for what they want to do in the next month and the next 6 months and the next year to start to implement these ideas. And we also have a consulting operation that then works with some of those companies who need help to help them go on this journey over time. And we already have talked about this.
El presente nos obliga a actuar ya. Nos compromete a reconocer que nuestro mundo y quienes lo habitamos compartimos el mismo destino. Y que cada decisión que tomamos hoy impacta el mañana. Las empresas conscientes saben que el futuro es uno y se construye sobre su principal razón de ser: crear valor, compartir prosperidad. Empresas comprometidas, líderes de hoy y del mañana, generadoras de una nueva riqueza integral y compartida, que abrazan la pasión por impactar positivamente en todo. Descubre la nueva forma de ser empresa. Centro de Empresas Conscientes. Crear valor. Compartir prosperidad. Tecnológico de Monterrey.
Francisco is our leader, the executive director of the center, and of course, the former Adizes consultant. So we have that connection already. Thank you very much.